Just wanted to say a few words ahead of this video because these videos come off the back of a huge lot of Eaglemoss Star Trek ships that I picked up recently. And so I've put up all the duplicates on eBay for you to have a look at, and I'll include links around and about the place. So if you've got any sort of interest in getting hold of a few of these to have a look at them for yourself, you can do so for a while at least, because it looks like they're not going to go flying off the shelves. I've tried to price them quite reasonably, so do please go and have a look. And without further ado, I will get on with the main video. Cheers. Now, this particular model was not one that came in my job lot, but I have been after an Akira class for quite a while because it fills a gap in my Federation ships from Jean-Luc's era, basically. And you know, I've got the Norway class, I've got Steam Runner, I've got Sabre. So really, the Akira was one of the ones that I was particularly missing. So I actually bought this one separately, but I thought I'd do this one for you as I haven't shown it before on the channel. And it was actually a fascinating read, this magazine, because what I hadn't really appreciated about this was that it was designed for First Contact. So that was the first time that we saw them, was battling the Borg Cube in the Battle of Sector 001. Which I have no difficulty with because it's very much an era appropriate sort of ship. But what I hadn't realised is just how heavily armed this ship is. Its sort of production date puts it between the Galaxy class and the Sovereign. So it doesn't have that sort of armoured feel to it that the Sovereign got when we saw it in First Contact. But by the same token, its saucer section is getting up to that sort of level. And apparently the escape pods are like Sovereign escape pod hatches. So it's kind of this bridge, I suppose, between the Galaxy class and the Sovereign. It's somewhere in the middle, time-wise. And it's launched in the 2370s. Quite big, 460 metres, quite fast, warp 9.8. But this thing is a complete beast. I was quite surprised when I read the fact file on it as I was going through, because I just thought, this is really nasty. You would not want to mess with this. But this was apparently part of the shift towards, the sort of Sovereign class ships, which were more heavily combat ready than they had previously been, when the focus was more on peaceful exploration. The whole area was getting rougher, so they felt they needed a starship that could react to that. But this goes way beyond that, and it's the actual thinking behind its design is fascinating. So weapons pod with multiple launchers, and we do mean multiple here, like double figures multiple. It's crazy. Saucer mounted launchers and phaser strips. So it is absolutely bonkers. So this weapons pod at the top here, it's supposed to have 4 torpedo launchers facing front at the top, and then 3 in another row immediately underneath that. So it's got 7 forward-firing torpedo launchers, 2 of which are rigged for quantum torpedoes, and so it can launch a volley of 7 torpedoes at a time. That's insane. Quite frankly, that's absolutely insane. I mean, I have no idea. I mean, I don't know how many you would actually be able to store in here. I mean, can you replicate them on site? I don't know. But they were supposed to be like sort of rapidly loading as well. So it could just chuck torpedoes out at the rate of knots. So if your enemy is susceptible to that as a weapon, you're going to be laughing, basically. And it doesn't stop there, because it's got another launcher underneath its navigational deflector sort of area. And it's also got side launchers, which I've never heard of as a thing. It can launch torpedoes sideways, which actually in space makes perfect sense. And I'm kind of surprised they've never done it before, but torpedoes can track. They do have their own guidance systems. So I'm a little bit surprised that they would bother to do that. But I guess the idea is that, I think those are the torpedo launchers there on the side. But when you think about it, if I were an enemy, I'd be primarying that pod like crazy. Because if you take that pod out, the vast majority of the Akira's teeth get pulled. So I would primary that, but because it's so narrow, the instant it rotates, it can block a shot on that quite easily. So the whole ship is really, really fascinating, and because it doesn't really have a secondary hull as such, I think its engineering areas must be sort of in the pylon areas here. And in case you're thinking this looks familiar, you'd be right, because the NX-01 Enterprise from Enterprise is based off the Akira. Take the Akira, flip it, it's the Enterprise. Yes? Yes. But they felt that that's why this kind of made sense as a starting point for Enterprise, because in the timeline, it's effectively a design they kind of return to, but they just flip it. So I have no problem with that, because I think it works quite well both ways. And in fact, there's an episode of Enterprise that you might have seen where they actually run Enterprise with the Columbia upside down so that they can share a warp field. And of course, as soon as you see the Columbia from the back like that, I immediately go Akira class, because that's exactly what it looks like from upside down from the back. There's virtually no difference really, apart from the fact that that's engineering on the Enterprise, not a sort of bristling weapons pod. But anyway, now you might have thought this was a navigational deflector. And that is not an unreasonable assumption. If it were Enterprise, it would be a navigational deflector. However, fascinatingly, and I did not know this about the Akira class before I read this magazine, that's a shuttle bay. But it's not just any shuttle bay, it's actually effectively 3 shuttle bays. You've got 1, 2, 3 entrances, but they can get back in at the back of the ship. So the shuttle bay goes all the way through the length of the saucer section, which means it's got a massive capacity for ancillary craft, which could include fighters. So that's a really, really interesting thing, because by the time you watch this video, I've just done a video on fighters where I say, and of course, Star Trek doesn't have starfighters until quite late on, but the Akira is actually a carrier class vessel, because it's actually given a large amount of thought. It's got extra shielding around the shuttle bay entrances and exits and so on. So it's really, really rigged for serious fleet type activity. But it also means that it can do a lot of rescue work, it can do a lot of reconnaissance work, all that sort of good stuff, because it can field a small fleet just by itself, which makes perfect sense. And obviously, in the Dominion War, we do see more Federation fleet work. And you can see here, in fact, I hope, that there's a little tiny fleet of some small ships there, but there's an Akira there, Galaxy, Defiant, Miranda, Excelsior, possibly, I want to say maybe even Ambassador down there. But, everything they could throw at it, basically. And there's an Akira under construction here, the Antares Fleet Yards, I think it was. Although this is probably not. That looks more like the that's Utopia Planitia. But these guys were apparently first created at the Antares Fleet Yards. And again, we saw them challenging the Borg sphere that came in at the end of Voyager. But the concept of it having a fly-through shuttle bay was brilliant, I thought. So you can see the shuttle bay entrance is there, and the exits it's just 3 abreast at the front. So you've got 4 shuttle bay door there, navigational deflector underslung, and quite heavily shielded as well. If you notice, it's quite inset, and the bridge position is also very, very clever, because the what would you call those? Sort of pylons, I suppose. Not the best name for it. But there's the engineering hull elements here actually shield the bridge from the side and a little bit from above as well. So it's not as stood out and exposed as it often is on Federation ships of the line. Because I always thought that was a bit of a weakness. Because again, you just target the bridge and you effectively deal a crippling blow to the command crew of the vessel involved. So better to hide the bridge at least a bit, which is kind of what they go for here. So it fitted in really well with the sort of the Sabre and the Norway and the Steam Runner. And apparently they were going to do loads of new ships for First Contact, and they told them we can only afford 4 plus the Enterprise. but they all had to look different to the Enterprise as well at the same time, because they didn't want the poor silly viewer to get confused. So they were very happy with this because it does look radically different to the standard Enterprise body form that we're used to seeing. So that makes perfect sense. So here are some of the work in progress designs here. But it is, a lovely, lovely ship. I do really, really like it as ships go. And that's why I was spending a bit of time to sort of hunt one down. And also because every time I say Akira, I just want to say Tetsuo Kaneda. Because if you're not familiar, the ship was named after the anime film of the 80s, Akira, featuring those two characters. So its cool rating increased massively, given that that's what it's named after. I loved that film when it came out, but anyway, that's a whole different conversation. So again, Shuttle Bay at the back there. I can't immediately think of another Federation ship that has that approach to shuttles, where they can just sort of fly right through the ship. With a sort of fore and aft entrance built in, that's quite a radical concept. The impulse engines are just nested there at the back of the saucer section. Some of it's quite conventional. It reminds me a little bit of the Miranda and the Nebula classes because of this sort of roll bar element. In fact, perhaps more than Miranda, because the Nebula does have more of a sort of secondary hull underneath the saucer section, whereas this sort of eschews that and just concentrates it horizontally rather than going vertically down to accommodate it, because presumably there's a warp core in here somewhere. Maybe there are two, I don't know. It's possible. From a redundancy point of view, I think that would be quite a cool idea if it had two warp cores. But I've no idea if that would make any sort of engineering sense for this sort of ship. But it's such a clever design, and I don't know. I don't know how long it would take to produce those as against a sort of secondary hull standard type ship. But you get the impression that it might be cheaper, faster to build than something like a Sovereign, I would guess. So you could make more faster and have a more effective fleet faster. But we did see quite a lot of them in action in first contact. One or two got taken out as well. The Thunderchild was one of the ships at Sector 001, but it was CGI only as well. They never built a solid model of this one. The Sovereign, I have been told by very kind commenters that the Sovereign class Enterprise in First Contact was a physical model, so they used motion control to film that one, but all the other supporting ships were pure CGI, which meant they could do that much more with them, I guess, more easily, to make it a bit more dynamic. But originally the battle was going to be much bigger, but they scaled it back. So we didn't actually see that much of these ships, but they do feature very prominently in the first few minutes of the film. So that's it for the Sacrifice of Angels. Deep Space Nine saw quite a few of them as well. Excuse me. Let's have a look at the model. So there she is. Well, it's not bad weight actually. Nacelles are plasticky, but as is often the way with these things, the saucer section is metal. So that's where a lot of the weight comes from. Let's have a look at some of the details here. Nice. So it's got a slightly armoured nacelle look to it. It's not as open as say the Enterprise D was, but it's not quite as enclosed as say the Steamrunner and that sort of look. But look at it like that. That is so Enterprise, isn't it? It really is. It could if you just sort of mask the navigational deflector off, it basically is Enterprise. So I do like that they did that though. It's almost a little bit like the Enterprise refit actually, but not dissimilar. Looks like they couldn't actually. They don't seem to have got the name of the ship there. Did it have the name? I'm pretty sure that in the magazine Or no, actually no. In fairness, perhaps it doesn't. Oh, no, it does. No, well, I don't know. According to the CGI, according to the model they're using to print in the magazine, it ought to have its name there. But I think in the first contact image, it doesn't have it there. So one of the two is right. But in any event, this doesn't actually have a ship name on it as such. I mean, if I were to be really, really picky, they could have coloured in these escape pod hatches a slightly different colour. I think, it might just be my aged eyes, but they don't look like they're the sort of slightly orangey, yellowy sort of colour that they normally are. Which is a bit of a missed opportunity if that's the case. But I'm just trying to see if I can... You can sort of see the shuttle bay entrance, but again, they haven't really. Maybe it's because this one's just too small. They can't really make a huge distinction with it to make it really sort of stand out. Unfortunately, and presumably, again, at the back here, there isn't. You can't really see where the sort of the entrance area is. I mean, it's definitely distinct, but again, they can't sort of draw any attention to it, I think, because of the scale. So it's a little bit of a shame they didn't go a little bit bigger with it. I think they could have done a little bit more with it if they'd gone a little bit bigger. This has been displayed before. Now, you see, when I did my auctions, I said the base was wrapped, and that meant that it hadn't come out before from its box. This one, I think, it must have been displayed before, and it's got a little bit of a mark on it, from its stand as well. But that's what you get sometimes when you get stuff off eBay. I can't actually remember. In fairness, I can't actually remember if the auction said it hadn't ever been displayed. So that may be fair enough. Let's pop her on. I just had to think whether I had that the right way round for a minute. I thought, am I right in doing it that way round, or is it in fact the Enterprise? But it is in fact that way round. But that's fine. I mean, the model itself is absolutely fine, though, which is the main thing. So if need be, I could always apply a bit of something to darken up the base if I was that fussed about it. But at a distance, you wouldn't really notice. So So finally, I have my Akira class, which is marvellous. And as I say, really, really interesting to read the magazine as well, which I already had one of, actually. But just really sort of interesting to learn just how seriously kick-ass a ship it actually was, which I dare say is why there's a lot of fondness for it in the fandom, because it's a properly capable combat ship, which Starfleet was desperately in need of at that sort of time period, as the Dominion and everyone else were serious threats. So, good stuff. That is about it for my auction-orientated videos. It's been quite the marathon to get through as many as I have done. I've now got over 100 Eaglemoss unboxing videos on the channel, and I do actually still have one more Eaglemoss model that I haven't unboxed yet for my own personal purposes, so I can probably round off with that one, but that will be the end of my sort of near as damn it daily videos over the past couple of weeks for this particular purpose. So I hope you've enjoyed this sudden burst of activity on the Eaglemoss front. If you could see my display shelves, they're bursting at the seams now, because I'm going to have a serious reorganisation and possibly buy some more shelves. But that's it from me for now. Cheers for now.